Puritanism is Christian faith that originated in England during the early 1600s. Puritans believed in predestination. McCarthyism is a term used to describe a period of intense suspicion in the U.S. during the early 1950s. Miller based the Crucible off the Salem witch trials. The Salem witch trials was a series of prosecutions of people accused of witchcraft. Arthur Miller was an American playwright and writer. He was accused of being a communist after writing The Crucible.
My name's John Proctor. I'm a local farmer who lives just outside town. Elizabeth Proctor is my wife. People describe me as a stern, harsh-tongued man. I hate hypocrites. I have a secret. I had an affair with Abigail Williams. I didn't want to expose Abigail for doing witchcraft in the woods because I was worried that my secret would get out and my name would be ruined. I'm Elizabeth Proctor, John Proctor's wife. I fired Abigail when I discovered that my husband and her were having an affair. I'm supremely virtuous but often cold. I'm Reverend John Hale. I'm a young minister reputed to be an expert on witchcraft. I was called to Salem to examine Paris's daughter Betty. I'm a committed Christian and I hate witchcraft. I think my intelligence saves me from falling into the witchcraft. My arrival set the hysteria in motion, although I later regret my actions and I attempt to save all those lives of those accused.
I am Reverend Paris, the minister of Salem's church. I seem to be a paranoid, power-hungry, yet oddly self-pitying figure. Many of the townsfolk, especially John Proctor, dislike me, and I am very concerned with building my position in the community. I am Rebecca Nurse, Francis Nurse's wife. I am a wise, sensible, and upright woman held in tremendous regard by most of the Salem community. However, I fell victim to the hysteria when the Putnams accused me of witchcraft, and I refused to confess. I am Judge Danforth, the Deputy Governor of Massachusetts and the presiding judge at the witch trials. I think I'm honest in doing the right in rooting out witchcraft in Salem.
I'm Tituba. I'm a black woman from Barbados. I'm Reverend Paris's black slave, and I performed voodoo at Abigail's request.
I am Mary Warren, the servant in the Proctor household and a member of Abigail's group of girls. I seem to be a timid girl, easily influenced by those around me. I unsuccessfully tried to expose the hoax and ultimately recanted my confession.
I'm Abigail Williams. I'm Reverend Paris's niece, and I was once a servant at the Proctor household, but Elizabeth Proctor fired me when she discovered that I was having an affair with her husband, John Proctor. People have told me that I'm smart, willy, a good liar, and vindictive when crossed. Bum, bum, bum.
The Crucible is a historical drama written to expose the wrongful use of force by the U.S. government to try and prove that they were communist in the U.S. Using the Salem witch trials and the communist scare, Miller was able to write a play in order to express his feeling of being wronged and discriminated and not being caught by the government. It was written during the time of the hearings and the blacklist crime. The witchcraft hysteria began in Salem, Massachusetts in early 1962. Reverend Paris's daughter and Abigail Williams started having fits, and the doctor concluded it was witchcraft. A recently published book of the time detailed the symptoms of witchcraft. Puritans of Salem were quick to conclude. The girls pointed fingers at Tituba, the Paris's slave, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne, which sparked a witch hunt. More than 150 people were imprisoned for witchcraft during the next 8 months.
In the Puritan New England town of Salem, Massachusetts, a group of girls go dancing in the forest with a black slave named Tituba. While dancing, they are caught by the local minister, Reverend Paris. One of the girls, Paris's daughter Betty, falls into a coma-like state. A crowd gathers in the Paris home while rumors of witchcraft fill the town. Having sent for Reverend Hale, an expert on witchcraft, Paris questions Abigail Williams, the girls' ringleader, about the events that took place in the forest. Betty wakes up and begins screaming. Much of the crowd rushes upstairs and gathers in her bedroom, arguing over whether she is bewitched. A separate argument between Proctor, Paris, the argumentative Giles Corey, and the wealthy Thomas Putnam soon ensues. This dispute centers on money and land deeds, and it suggests that deep fault lines run through the Salem community. As the men argue, Reverend Hale arrives and examines Betty while Proctor departs. Hale quizzes Abigail about the girl's activities in the forest, grows suspicious of her behavior, and demands to speak to Tituba. After Paris and Hale interrogate her for a brief time, Tituba confesses to communing with the devil, and she hysterically accuses various townsfolk of consorting with the devil. Suddenly, Abigail joins her, confessing to having seen the devil conspiring and cavorting with other townspeople. Betty joins them in naming witches, and the crowd is thrown into an uproar. A week later, alone in their farmhouse outside of town, John and Elizabeth...
Thank you, Rhett.
Thank you for that, Rick. All right, I'll start that again. A week later, alone in their farmhouse outside of town, John and Elizabeth Proctor discuss the ongoing trials and the escalating number of townsfolk who have been accused of being witches. Elizabeth urges her husband to denounce Abigail as a fraud. He refuses, and she becomes jealous, accusing him of still harboring feelings for her. Mary Warren, their servant and one of Abigail's circle, returns from Salem with news that Elizabeth has been accused of witchcraft, but the court did not pursue the accusation. Mary is sent up to bed, and John and Elizabeth continue their argument, only to be interrupted by a visit from Reverend Hale. While they discuss matters, Giles Corey and Francis Nurse come to the Proctor home with visit from Reverend Hale. While they discuss matters, Giles Corey and Francis Nurse come to the Proctor home with news that their wives have been arrested. Officers of the court suddenly arrive and arrest Elizabeth. After they have taken her, Proctor browbeats Mary, insisting that she must go to Salem and expose Abigail and the other girls as frauds. 2 more paragraphs. Let's get it, Dave. The next day, Proctor brings Mary to court and tells Judge Danforth that she will testify that the girls are lying. Danforth is suspicious of Proctor's motives and tells Proctor truthfully that Elizabeth is pregnant and will be spared for a time. Proctor persists in his charge, convincing Danforth to allow Mary to testify. Mary tells the court that the girls are lying, and when the girls are brought in, they turn the tables by accusing Mary of bewitching them. Furious, Proctor confesses his affair with Abigail and accuses her of being motivated by jealousy of his wife. To test Proctor's claim, Danforth summons Elizabeth and asks her if Proctor has been unfaithful to her. Despite her natural honesty, she lies to protect Proctor's honor, and Danforth denounces Proctor as a liar. Meanwhile, Abigail and the girls again pretend that Mary is bewitching them, and Mary breaks down and accuses Proctor of being a witch. Proctor rages against her and against the court. He is arrested, and Hale quits the proceeding. Last one, let's get it.
No, you can't.
All right, I'm ready. The summer passes and autumn arrives. The witch trials have caused unrest in neighboring towns, and Danforth grows nervous. Abigail has run away, taking all of Paris's money with her. Hale, who has lost faith in the court, begs the accused witches to confess falsely in order to save their lives, but they refuse. Danforth, however, has an idea. He asks Elizabeth to talk John into confessing, and she agrees. Conflicted but desiring to live, John agrees to confess, and the officers of the court rejoice. But he refuses to incriminate anyone else, and when the court insists that the confession must be made public, Proctor grows angry, tears it up, and retracts his admission of guilt. Despite Hale's desperate pleas, Proctor goes to the gallows with the others, and the witch trials reach their awful conclusion.
And go.
The doll found on Elizabeth Proctor's shelf is a traditional symbol of voodoo and witchcraft. The doll symbolizes the transformation of good to evil. Juxtaposition is a literary technique in which 2 or more ideas, places, or characters are used to develop comparisons and contrasts. Miller uses a juxtaposition to compare the Salem witch trials to McCarthyism and the hysteria of communism during the 1950s. We're good? The Crucible in its entirety is set around religion, whether it be pagan religion or Puritan religion, and it's shown in Act 2 when Miller states, Abigail brings the other girls into the court, and where she walks, the crowd will part like the Sea of Israel. Abigail is trying to prove that there's no hope for them now that Abigail is making the accusations. This quote alludes to the book of Exodus in the Bible when Moses is leading the Jewish people out of Israel and God was on his side. God parted the sea for the safety of his people.
Arthur Miller is an American playwright. Wait, did he die? Or
He died a couple years ago.
okay, was.
He was an American playwright. Hey.